In this video, we're going to take a deeper dive into the actions that Sigma agents can take. In a previous video, we created a task tracking agent using basic actions and input tables. In this video, we'll take a deeper dive into what actions are possible, and in a later video, we'll explore external tools such as API connectors, MCP tools, and things like that. So let's go ahead and dive into more actions. If you have not watched the Introduction to Sigma Agents video on the Maverick Data YouTube channel, feel free to go check it out and see how we build this task tracking agent. To give a brief overview so we're all on the same page, we created this task tracking input table and we created an agent that updates this table for us. The agent is connected to our task tracking input table and has two tools. One action inserts a row to add a new task by using the agent input. The other action updates the status column of the table. We used the Builder Assistant on the left to create our instructions that we see on the right. By providing basic context for what we want the agent to be able to do, the Builder Assistant is able to create these instructions for us. Now we're going to build this agent out even more. Now let's take a step back for a second. Our agent can perform a lot of actions. These are the actions as of today, but we know that Sigma is constantly innovating and this list will only continue to grow. Today, the actions are grouped into 8 categories: navigation, export, controls, elements, modals, input tables and forms, external calls, and advanced actions. We're going to focus on the 6 on the left. Now, in our previous video, where we built a basic task tracking agent, we used insert row and update rows. In this video, we're going to explore some of these additional actions, including navigating in the workbook, notifying and exporting, setting control values, custom sorting, and opening a modal. Now, I'm going to give you a broad overview of some of the actions that I've added to my agent, and then we're going to add a notify and export and an open modal action together so that you can see how I execute this process from start to finish. Let's take a look. I've updated the format of this workbook to be a little bit more clear as we add some complexity. We have a hidden data page with our task tracking input table, and I've added some additional tasks for the sake of example. I've also added an employee details table to give the agent more context as it's making decisions about tasks. Then we have a dashboard page. Here I have the agent on the left, and I have a repeater container on the right showing me the task details. Lastly, there's this directions page, which we'll talk about in a second. Now let's take a look at some of the actions that I've already configured. We can click into the agent and see that there are 5 actions. The first 2 are the add a task and update the status actions that we added in the first video. The next 3 actions are new. We have a navigate to directions action that uses the navigate in this workbook action to navigate to the top of the directions page. We have a sort status action that uses the custom sort action to sort the repeater container based on a status sort column. And lastly, we have an action that sets control values for project name and task name based on the agent input. Now, when we add actions, we also need to add instructions for these actions. For example, we can see here, the first thing you must always do is use the set project and task controls action to set the project name and task name for what the user is inquiring about. Now, this is a really lengthy instruction. Some of this detail was added by the Builder Assistant, and some of this was added by me as I was testing the agent. If I notice that the agent isn't behaving the way that I want it to, I'll open my agent and add additional information. So for example, I added this do not set the task control if no particular task is named because the agent was assigning null to the task control, and I don't want it to do that. If we scroll down, we see the additional directions that were added for our navigate action and for our sort action. Now let's test some of these. If we come over here and say, what can this agent do? Then we'll let the agent think for a second. And we can see that it did provide some information, but it also used the action to navigate to the directions page. Now let's go back to home and let's say, show me details for the financial reporting project for the build dashboard task. Now, I did provide some pretty specific information there. There are instructions in the agent that tell it to query the task input table to find the exact name of a project or a task instead of just guessing or using what I say. So you can say here, it did go query the task tracking input table for relevant projects and names, even though I did provide like pretty descriptive information in the chat, which is good. That's what we want it to do. So we can see that it set the control values just like we wanted. Now that we have explored some of the actions I already created, we're going to create our own action from start to finish. Let's add an action that will notify a manager when a task is marked as complete and will open a modal to let us know that the email was sent. So first, let's create a modal, and we're going to call this the email modal. And let's set this up a little bit. So we'll say email sent. We'll add a text box that says you marked a task as complete and your manager was notified to review the task. Then we'll set up our footer. And we'll add an action to that primary button that closes the modal. And then we'll just do some formatting to make this look prettier. So I always like to bold my titles, and I always like using an extra small width for something like this. Now let's go back to our agent and let's add the action. So the first thing that I always do is create any elements that I need for my action, like we just created the modal. The second thing I do is go to add a tool. So next to tools, you'll press the plus sign, and we're going to call this email manager. Now let's add our first action, which will be notify and export. We're going to use the destination email. And instead of specific recipients, we're going to use dynamic. Now what this means is that we can choose our recipient based on some formula, some control, or anything like that. We're going to use this lookup formula, which is going to find the manager's email address associated to that specific task and project in our input table. We can say task complete for the subject line and tell the manager to please review the completed task. We'll send them a link to the workbook, and we don't need an attachment. To add a second action in the same sequence, we'll add a step. And now our second step is going to be open modal, and we're going to open our email modal. Sweet, so our action is created. Now we need to add additional instructions in our agent. So let's come over here and say, add information to use the, and we use the @ symbol to reference one of our tools. So we'll use the @ symbol and we'll find email manager. So add information to use the email manager tool when a user marks a task as completed. Now the agent is going to think through this for a second and then provide some additional instructions by editing what we already have here. So we can see right here, when a task is marked as completed, use the email manager tool to notify the manager. Always write in chat what tool is being used. So fingers crossed this works, and let's go test it. So let's say mark the financial reporting projects task, build reporting as completed. So we're referencing that current task that we see filtered on our screen, But the agent is still going to go through all of the steps. So it's going to first query the table to find the project and task related to what we're asking. So we can see that's what it's doing right now. It's setting the control values to filter to it. It's marking it as completed. We just saw the status update. It's looking for the manager's email address. And then we can see our modal popped up to tell us that the action was run. And we do get this error message at the bottom. It's not important for what we're doing right now. It's just letting us know that it didn't actually fire off the email because we're in draft mode. Normally when you're using this, you would be in published mode. The email would send no problem. So our action ran successfully. I hope this helped figure out how to add actions from start to finish, update our instructions, and make us feel super confident adding more actions to our agent to make more complex agents. Go ahead and give it a try, and hopefully we'll see you back here to review even more complex external tools that we can use with our Sigma agents.